They kicked me out at 18 to save their golden son. They had no idea I would come back as their boss. If someone had told me my parents would one day beg me to save everything they had, I would have laughed in their face. The last time I stood in that house, my father told me I'd never amount to anything. My mother didn't argue. She didn't even look up. She just watched me pack my clothes into an old bag like she was waiting for me to finish so she could get back to dinner. My name is Nathan. I was 18. No backup plan. No family, far as I was concerned. But that wasn't the worst day of my life. The worst day came 15 years later, when I walked into a conference room and my own parents didn't recognize the man standing in front of them. Let me back up. My brother's name was Caleb. He was born, and it was like the whole house just rearranged itself around him overnight. I was 3 years older, so I remember a time before him. I remember being enough, once, for about 3 years. Then he showed up, and I became the rough draft. It wasn't one big moment. It was 1,000 small ones. A good report card, and my father would glance at it and ask if Caleb had turned in his science project yet. A regional award I worked months for, and my mother said, "That's nice, honey." Then spent 20 minutes on the phone bragging about Caleb making the travel team. My father had a line he loved. "That's fine, but your brother has real potential." Like there wasn't enough potential in the house for 2 kids, and every drop of it had already been spoken for. I used to think I was imagining it. Kids do that. So I tried harder. I figured if I just achieved enough, eventually they'd see me. They never did. When I was 16, I found paperwork in my father's desk, a family education fund. Never heard of it before. I asked my mother about it at dinner. She got quiet. Then, "Don't worry about that. That's for your brother's future." I didn't understand yet what that meant. The year I turned 18, my father's business hit trouble. Money got tight fast. Hushed calls. Unopened envelopes piling up on the counter. I figured we'd handle it together. That's what families do. Instead, they called a meeting. Just the 4 of us at the dining table, like a business negotiation. My father didn't waste time. "We don't have enough for both of you right now," he said. "Caleb's just starting. You'll figure something out. You always do." I asked what that meant for me. He said every dollar left in this family was going toward Caleb's education, his future. I turned to my mother. I needed her to disagree. Just once. She didn't even meet my eyes. "Your father's right," she said quietly. "We have to be smart about this." I begged. I'm not too proud to say that now. Asked for time, a few months, anything. My father said it was final. Said it the way he closed out a meeting at work. Then he told me to leave. That night. Not in a week. Not after I found a place. I packed one bag. Stood in the doorway, waiting for someone to stop this. My mother had already turned back to the kitchen. Walking down the driveway, I heard them through the screen door, already talking about Caleb's dorm move-in date, like I'd evaporated the second I stepped outside. 18 years old, and as far as my family was concerned, I'd simply stopped existing. First year, I slept in a room with 3 strangers, the kind of place you learn to sleep with one eye open. Worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Some weeks, 1 real meal a day, and I called it a diet so it felt like a choice. I remember the first time I actually fixed something. A guy I worked with, his uncle's restaurant was bleeding money every month and nobody could say why. I sat with his books for one night, for free, because I had nothing better to do with my evening. Found it in under an hour. He'd been paying 2 different vendors for the exact same delivery. That was the whole secret. Nobody had ever just looked. I started looking, for anyone who'd let me. A referral, then another. Library books, free courses, anything I could get my hands on at night. I worked harder than everyone around me, because I had nothing to fall back on if I failed. Years went by like that. The wound never fully closed, but I stopped picking at it every day. I built something. Honestly. I never set out for revenge. I didn't lie awake plotting how they'd pay. I just wanted to build the kind of life they swore was impossible for someone like me. By my early 30s, I had a name in a very small, very specific world. Companies on the edge of collapsing called me when nobody else could fix them. One day, a colleague mentioned a family company quietly falling apart. Several consultants had already failed on it. I recognized the industry, the region. Told myself it wasn't them. Pushed it out of my mind. For a while. The call came on a Tuesday. A lawyer, very formal, explaining a client needed urgent restructuring. The number attached to the contract was almost insulting, how high it was. I asked who the client was. Pause on the line. Then she said the name. My father's company. I just sat there, phone still in my hand. Read her sentence about 4 times before any of it landed. 15 years, not one phone call, not one letter. And now they needed me. The version of me they'd never bothered to look for. I almost said no. My finger was actually on the word when I stopped, because something didn't add up. How does a business like that, built over decades, collapse this badly? I'd seen the public version from a distance for years. Growth, awards. Caleb's face in some regional business magazine. Golden son inheriting the golden future. None of it matched a company on the edge of bankruptcy. Curiosity won. It always does, with me. Took the contract under a corporate name that wasn't mine. Walked into that conference room in a suit that cost more than everything we owned the year I left. My father at the head of the table, smaller than I remembered. Grey through hair that used to be solid black. My mother beside him, hands folded, looking like she'd aged 20 years instead of 15. Neither one looked at me twice. Thank you for coming, my father said. We're desperate. We don't know what else to do. I shook his hand. Felt like shaking the hand of someone I'd never met. Let's see what we're working with, I said. And I sat down across from my own parents, and neither of them had the faintest idea who I was. First week, I was buried in their books, and almost nothing made sense. On paper, this should have been thriving. But money was vanishing in a pattern that didn't match decline. It matched something else. Something that looked, the longer I stared, almost intentional. Then I found the signature. Buried under 3 years of bad contracts, all approved by the same person, all routed through accounts that led, eventually, to debts that had nothing to do with the company at all. Caleb, the golden child, the one worth throwing me away for. I sat with that printout a long time before I told anyone, because here's the part nobody saw coming, including me. He hadn't built some glittering career while I rebuilt mine from a bag of clothes. He'd been failing, quietly, for years, borrowing against the company to cover his own losses, lying to everyone, our parents included. I won't lie to you. For about an hour, I felt something close to vindicated. Then I found something underneath the fraud. Older. And that's when the floor actually dropped out from under me. Old letters. Some from before I'd even left the house. My mother, writing to an aunt I barely remembered. One line stopped me cold. Caleb is struggling again. We don't know what to do. We can't tell the boys apart in front of people, but at home, I'm terrified for him. Struggling again. I kept reading, and then I remembered the night I'd spent years trying to forget. I was 15. Caleb was 12. I came home late from a study group, and the house was already wrong before I got the door open. Every light on, my mother's voice pitched somewhere I'd never heard it go. I found Caleb in the bathroom, sitting on the floor between the toilet and the tub, both hands pressed so hard against his ears that his knuckles had gone white. He wasn't crying. That was the part that scared me. He was just rocking, slightly, saying the same 6 or 7 words over and over, too quiet to actually make out. My mother was crouched in front of him, not touching him, just talking low and steady, the way you'd talk to something that might bolt. My father stood in the hallway behind her, and I remember his face. Not angry, not even worried in any way I recognized, just still, like a man watching a house he couldn't put out. It took almost 2 hours before Caleb let my mother touch his shoulder. Nobody explained anything to me that night. The next morning, everyone just went back to breakfast like it hadn't happened, and I learned, without anyone teaching me, that we didn't talk about it. There was a second one almost a year later. We were at a family dinner, my grandmother's birthday, and someone made an offhand joke about Caleb's grades. Small thing. Nothing. He didn't yell. He went quiet in a way that was worse than yelling, got up from the table without a word, and by the time my father found him, he'd put his fist through the drywall in the upstairs hallway, hard enough that he needed 4 stitches across 2 knuckles. My mother told the relatives he'd tripped on the stairs. I remember thinking even then that the lie came too fast, too smooth, like she'd already had it ready for a while. Wait. What? I sat in that empty conference room at 11 at night, rereading the same paragraph until the words stopped making sense, then started making a different, worse kind of sense. They hadn't believed Caleb had more potential. They believed he had less to fall back on. They didn't throw me away because I didn't matter. They threw me away because they thought I was strong enough to survive it, and they didn't think he was. 15 years of memory, rearranging itself in real time. The bathroom floor, the drywall, the way my mother used to watch him a beat too long whenever he came home upset, like she was always half bracing for the next one. My father's silence in that hallway wasn't coldness. It was fear, dressed up as nothing, because a man like him didn't have a name for what he was watching his son go through. I'd spent 15 years believing I was the unwanted one. I wasn't unwanted. I was the one they trusted enough to throw into the cold without a coat, because some broken part of them believed I'd find a way through it, and he wouldn't. Didn't make what they did right. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't erase it. It just changes the shape of the thing. Company was weeks from collapse, creditors circling, employees who'd given it 20 years about to lose everything. I called a final meeting. My parents, Caleb, the lawyers, stood at the head of that table and told them who I was. Silence first. My father's face went the color of paper. My mother started crying before I'd even finished the sentence, like some part of her already knew. Caleb wouldn't look at me at all. No yelling. 15 years, and when the moment came, just the truth, laid out flat, same as every other fact in that company's books. I told them what I found, the fraud. Then, because I couldn't carry it by myself anymore, I told them what I'd read in those letters too. I told them I remembered the bathroom floor. My mother spoke first. "We thought about you every day." Her voice broke clean in half. "I don't have an excuse. We were ashamed. The longer it went, the harder it got to pick up a phone." My father didn't defend himself. Just sat there, looking for the first time in my whole life like a man instead of a verdict. And everyone in that room understood the same thing at the same time. I was the only one who got to decide what happened next. I had everything I needed to walk away and let it burn. Nobody would have blamed me. I chose something else, agreed to restructure and save it. Employees kept their jobs. My parents kept their home, though most of what they'd built was gone for good. One condition, non-negotiable. Caleb out of leadership permanently. He needed to build something of his own instead of borrowing his way through a life everyone had already handed him. Here's the only truth that matters. I didn't save them because they deserved it. I saved them because I wasn't going to let 15 years of pain decide who I'd become. Months later, the company was standing again. Smaller. Humbler. My parents kept each other, and they kept the house. Caleb started over somewhere quiet, doing work that didn't come with his face attached to it. We're not a family again. I won't dress that up for the ending of a story. Some wounds go too deep for one conversation to close. But for the first time since I was 18, standing in that doorway with one bag and no plan, I don't need their approval to know what I'm worth.